I'm Kristen Leonard. I am the Executive Director of PALMI and one of the PALS, Haiku for Consortia, project owners. And today we're going to give you a quick update on our current grant. And I'm going to do it very fast, and then I'm going to hand it over to Lauren Collister, who is here from Invest in Open Infrastructure, who is going to tell you a little bit about our preliminary research. And then Heather is going to respond to a certain extent about initiatives already in progress, but seeing how we're aligning to what the preliminary research is telling us. So that will hopefully advance my screen. There we go. So just real quick, we're in starting the second year of this 2-year grant. The goals are to build, clarify, and enhance collaboration, leverage the collective expertise and resources of the Samvera community, and improve Haiku's development processes to streamline cross-project collaboration. I think you heard a lot yesterday, especially knapsack is one of those things that I think is really making that available to us, but it's also the people side of things and making sure that we're talking to each other in very effective ways. There are 5 work streams that are there on the right. And we are currently on the finance work stream, although there's a little bit of overlap of all of these sections. Our progress so far, we've made quite a bit. And again, I put the link in there so you can see that there's a blog post and lots of updates on each of these sections in there. But the key thing that I want to talk about is capacity. We've done quite a lot. Clarifying roles is the other part of that. The community piece of that, we're super glad to have Nick Dunn on board, and Tracy McCormick and Rob continuing and transforming and guiding and providing feedback to so much about what we're doing in terms of our structure. We just completed the training, and we did hire Invest in Open Infrastructure to do our consultancy on that assessment, financial, future planning piece. And just as a reminder, these are some of the deliverables that we're hoping collectively to achieve in this section of the grant. That stakeholder map and documentation clarifying roles and responsibilities and relationships. Some of that we had done in terms of the roles that we described for Haiku, the product owner and the tech lead, and the stakeholder map is some of the work that Lauren, her team are doing. That governance and decision-making framework is one of the things that we're also working on, especially since we've got a little bit of bucket of money to those last 2 work streams, which is to do some development and basically test our governance structure. And that idea of developing out a budget that talks about what are the co-investments that the community needs to do to sustain the strength and the activity of the project. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Lauren, and you're just going to have to tell me, I guess, when to advance slides.
That's fine. And thank you, everybody, for having me here today. And thank you for giving me a little bit of time to talk about this really interesting work that we've done so far. So I'm Lauren Collister, and I work for Invest in Open Infrastructure. We are a nonprofit that helps to increase the investment in and adoption of open infrastructure for the research ecosystem. And Haiku is clearly one of those open infrastructure projects that helps to contribute to the research ecosystem. So we're delighted to be working on this project. So far, we're about halfway through our project period, and we have been reviewing a lot of material and talking to many folks. And I see several of you on this call that we have talked to throughout the course of this project. So we have completed a sort of a documentation review with information, documentation, blog posts, meeting notes that were provided by the Sustaining Hyku steering group to us. We also conducted these 10 interviews that I mentioned and transcribed, and we've just gone through and completed a synthesis of the interview findings with the document research, which we will compile into a report, which will be delivered probably tomorrow to the team for their review. We're putting the last finishing touches on it right now, so you'll be able to read that very soon. But today I wanted to share some of the initial findings that we had from the work so far, what we've noticed about the Haiku community and how Haiku works. And again, these are our initial findings. We will develop these together with Sustaining Hyku steering group and additional input from the community. So I want to share 4 themes today that have come through very strongly in our findings. There are, of course, additional recommendations and themes that we won't get to today, but uh, when we talked about these in the Sustaining Haiku steering group, I think everybody there was really excited to share this with the rest of the group. So the first theme is that there has been this dramatic community transformation in the haiku group, haiku community over the past 5 or so years. It has changed from being a project that was sort of a software development focused to a product with a community of users around it that love the product, that care about it, and that want to see it succeed. It has an increase in user focused opportunities in the interest groups and documentation and other work that has gone on. And as a community like this transforms that way, of course, this is going to happen no matter what. The decision-making processes that worked before when it was a small group focus on a particular project, when the decision making that worked for that group does not always work for a bigger group with people with different viewpoints and different interests, different backgrounds. So we are hoping to document some of the decision making processes so far that have worked or that maybe encountered some friction and help to make a more structured decision making process and practice that, of course, you can iterate on as you gain more experience. The second theme that we noticed is this evolution of the product and service providers. So, Haiku has this really interesting story where there is both a very committed and experienced service provider with many individuals contributing to the software development throughout the history of Haiku, as well as other kinds of service providers, such as library consortia, PALs, of course, providing access to Haiku for their members. And it's an interesting dynamic, and it has also really represented in the transformation of the community as those consortia, as those institutions get more involved and engage in conversation with the software development folks and the existing service providers. It's really diversified the community quite a bit. Of course, as more and more people become interested in haiku, my cat also very interested apparently. She's going to insert herself into the conversation. Of course, as more and more people become interested in haiku, both locally and globally, a continued diversification of provider types, as well as different ways to support the software product that folks are so loyal to and interested in. That's the next level that we are interested in exploring with the Sustaining Haiku Steering Group. So those financial support levels that align to the needs and abilities of the haiku community, something we're very interested in exploring going forward. All right. The third theme, I didn't number these, so yes, this is theme number 3, is that growing support infrastructure. So Haiku's community has seen an increase in transparency. There's many new communication channels. There are Slack channels for different groups and projects. There are new office hours that are being done by Notch 8. That is a great way to share communication. There's 2 new grant funded roles, as Kristen just mentioned a moment ago. There's a lot of ways to find out what's going on with the haiku community. So as you develop this more transparency and more ways to communicate, and I'm sure Heather will talk about this in just a moment, there is an increased need for onboarding support for new community members. How do you navigate? How do you figure out where to go with your question or your comment? How do you know who to talk to about certain things or the others? It's really remarkable in Haiku's story so far how there are just individuals who seem to really drive the cohesion of the community, bringing people in, showing people around, showing people the ropes. And that's wonderful. And at this point, like sort of making that more formalized, making sure everybody is participating and thinking about new ways to do that. That's a key moment going forward for this community. However, we also need sustainability for those roles, making sure that the same people aren't doing all the tasks all the time and that that can lead to burnout, that can lead to overloading or scope creep on different roles. So just making sure there are those guide rails in place and those support structures that can help those roles be sustainable. And finally, community commitment. That is the thread that ties all of these together. And we talked about this in the steering group meeting. It was remarked upon by several folks that, you know, they this is unique, something that is really unique and important to Haiku. There is a loyal user base with a strong belief in open source values that really drives participation, even when there are roadblocks or hurdles, or somebody has a difficult time tackling a particular project or component. Folks are really committed to making it work. And that is just remarkable. It seems that the people in the community like working together, they like collaborating with each other. And when there's some trouble spot, they like going to the community to find support and to work through it. And that is not the case with every open source software community that exists out there. It's really something just so unique and valuable to Haiku. And cultivating that loyal user base, supporting and fostering that is key to success going forward. Um, and one of the things that folks have asked for in the interviews in particular, where they were always looking for ways to contribute that align with their capacity or their organizational types and needs, the things that their organization is focused on. Okay, how can we take that and
Did I tell you
transform that
that I'm
into
a
something that
Gemini,
can
please?
move
You said pro
Haiku
even.
Yeah.
forward? Sorry, we had a little feedback going on there, perhaps an unmute accidentally. So getting back on track, that community commitment is just the thread that ties a lot of these things together, and something that I think throughout the rest of the work for this particular collaboration process, we will be looking to highlight and foster as we work together going forward. So those are the four themes that we've noticed so far. You'll get to read even more about this in our upcoming needs assessment report and our interview brief that we will share in the coming days with the Sustaining Haiku steering group. So those are the next steps. We're going to deliver that report. It'll be reviewed. We'll have a conversation about it with the folks at the steering group. And then following that, we have an implementation plan. So after we deliver this report, we'll work together to identify, okay, what are the key aspects of this that interest both the Sustaining Haiku steering group and that IOI can help facilitate. And then we'll have a series of workshops with community members in Haiku facilitated by IOI staff to work towards those goals of that decision-making framework and that sustainability proposal that were mentioned just a moment ago. So those are the next step. That's what's coming up in the remainder of 2025 and early 2026 as we continue to work together. I am just so delighted to be working with everybody on this project and looking forward to sharing even more with you all in the coming days. So I think now I'll turn it over to Heather, who can share some of the work being done already by the Samvera community on some aspects of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Lauren. I've just got one slide. Thanks, Kirsten. Again, you did mention onboarding and making it easier for folks to get involved in the community. And that's something we have been working on in a lot of different groups. A developer onboarding working group, which turned into the documentation interest group. We did a lot of work on our Slack earlier this year to have sort of an automatic welcoming process that happens when someone new joins. And I am always on the lookout for new ways to help people get oriented, to get connected with somebody else in the community who can be a mentor. So we're always looking for new ways to tackle that. I think that's something that's will always be the case. But other elements of the work that IOI has been doing with this report really tie into things that the Samvera board has been talking about over the last year and things that we have talked about as being part of our 2026 community goals that I talked about in the State of Samvera talk on the first day of Connect Online. And I think these things align really well, and they, that is also on purpose because we've talked a lot about here are the things that we want to do, and we think these things can be informed by the work that IOI is doing, and we want to make sure to incorporate them and think about what things make sense to happen at the haiku level, and what are things that we can incorporate into the wider community level governance across the Samvera community. So just a few things to touch on. Shared staffing. So if you missed my talk on the first day, next year I need to go down to an 80% schedule. And that has given us a really unique and rare opportunity to have some money for some contract work, to have a technical coordinator for 20 hours a month. We want to see what comes from even that small amount of time for cross-platform technical coordination. So not coding in any of the platforms, but really having someone who can do the work that I frankly can't do, of technical level coordination across the platforms. And we think that that kind of shared staffing, it sort of paired with the shared staffing that I do, touches every single institution that uses software in the Samvera community, to have someone paying attention at that level. So we want to see how that pays off. And that sort of plays into the next two parts, which are once the community has the experience of having some technical coordination at that level, how do we sustain it at a time when everyone's budget is suffering, including the Samvera budget? And there's two ways we're tackling that next year. So a partnership model evaluation working group. We've had our partnership model now for about 5 years. Time to look at it and see, based on this work that IOI is doing and based on other feedback we'll get from folks participating, what's good about our partnership model, what's special about it, what are some things that maybe need to change as the context of our partners has changed, what are some things we can do to make it more valuable or easier to pitch to decision makers and AULs and so forth. Paired with that is an easier contribution options if you're not a partner, if you're not a partner yet, if your institution will never be able to be a partner. If we could get a little bit of pay what you can from every institution that relies on a Samvera platform as part of their critical infrastructure, we could do some incredible things with shared staffing. Because it's really a very small percentage of folks who are contributing as partners. So widening that pool, finding new ways to make that easier, will really support the work that we know shared staffing can do. And then project level decision making with board support. Haiku has already been doing a lot of that, and I just wanted to sort of reinforce that these kinds of decisions happening at the project or at the platform level is great, because there are things that are different for each platform, for who's using them and for how they need things to work. So having a community developer as a shared staffing position, for example, there's all kinds of cool ideas that are coming out of this work. They might just apply to Haiku. They might make sense to move up to the full community level. So there's just a lot of great stuff happening, and I think it all works together. I see no cross purposes happening with this grant work and with what the Samvera board is talking about, is focusing on for next year.
Wonderful. Thank you, Heather. And are there any questions or comments from the community? Obviously, lots more to say, and I know you've been hearing about this grant for a while. We really are making wonderful progress in all of this, and there's lots of thoughtful engagement with each of the stages of this as well. I mean, and has been happening in trying to figure out how to leverage what we're learning here from the new direction. So again, there's more information on the grant page, the Haiku interest group, Slack channel, anywhere you want to ask questions, have conversations. We appreciate it.